The year is 1919. The world is grappling with the aftermath of World War I. India, under British colonial rule, is no exception. The war effort has taken a toll on the subcontinent. Nationalism is surging, fueled by the sacrifices made by Indian soldiers in the war and the unfulfilled promise of greater autonomy. The British government, facing growing unrest and demands for self-rule, recognizes the need for change. The existing system of governance, centralized and autocratic, is no longer tenable. A new approach is needed, one that promises greater Indian participation in government, but without relinquishing ultimate control. This is the backdrop against which the Government of India Act of 1919, also known as the Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms, is enacted. It marks a significant turning point in the history of British rule in India, a tentative step towards self-governance, but one that falls short of the aspirations of the Indian people. The 1919 Act introduces a series of reforms aimed at gradually increasing Indian participation in government. Central to these reforms is the establishment of a bicameral legislature at the national level. The existing Imperial Legislative Council is replaced with a new two-chamber system, the Council of State and the Legislative Assembly. The Council of State, the upper house, is composed primarily of members elected by limited electorates. It acts as a revising chamber, reviewing legislation passed by the Legislative Assembly. The Legislative Assembly, the lower house, has a larger membership, with a majority of its members elected through a wider franchise. The Act also introduces the principle of diarchy, or dual government, at the provincial level. This system divides government functions into two categories, reserved and transferred. Reserved subjects, such as law and order, finance and revenue, remain under the control of the British administration. Transferred subjects, such as education, local self-government and public health, are entrusted to Indian ministers who are accountable to the provincial legislatures. The idea behind diarchy is to provide Indians with practical experience in governing while retaining British control over key areas. The 1919 Act also expands the franchise, granting voting rights to a larger segment of the Indian population. However, this expansion is limited and discriminatory. Property qualifications, literacy tests, and other restrictions mean that only a small percentage of Indians, primarily wealthy landowners and educated elites, are eligible to vote. Women are granted the right to vote in some provinces, but with even stricter qualifications than men. Despite its limitations, the expansion of the franchise is a significant step. It lays the groundwork for the development of a more representative democracy in India. Section 4. The limits of reform, criticisms and shortcomings of the 1919 Act. The Government of India Act of 1919, while introducing some reforms, is met with widespread criticism from Indians. Nationalist leaders argue that the reforms do not go far enough in granting self-rule. They criticize the limited franchise, the division of powers under diarchy, and the extensive powers retained by the British administration. The system of diarchy in particular proves to be unworkable and a source of friction between the elected Indian ministers and the British officials. The division of subjects is seen as artificial and often leads to conflicts over jurisdiction. Moreover, the Act fails to address the underlying issue of British control over the Indian government. The Governor-General, appointed by the British Crown, retains vast powers, including the power to veto legislation, issue ordinances, and even override the decisions of the elected legislature. Section 5. A catalyst for change. The legacy of the 1919 Act. The Government of India Act of 1919 marks a turning point in India's struggle for independence. While it falls short of Indian aspirations for self-rule, it lays the groundwork for future reforms. The introduction of diarchy, though flawed, provides Indians with valuable experience in government and administration. The expansion of the franchise, though limited, creates a new class of politically aware citizens and fuels the growth of nationalist sentiment. Most importantly, the Act's shortcomings galvanize the Indian independence movement. Dissatisfaction with the limited reforms strengthens the call for complete independence. The 1919 Act, therefore, serves as a catalyst for change, setting in motion a chain of events that would eventually lead to India's independence in 1947.